Good morning again, everyone. So we're close to the end of this webinar. Let's bring it home with lesson 4. Okay, now that we have conducted the ACE study, it's time to document the analysis and results with an alternative corridor evaluation report, or ACER. This report must include what corridors were developed, which corridors were eliminated, and the reason. Did a particular corridor not meet the analysis thresholds that were established in a methodology memorandum? What corridors are moving forward to the next phase, which could be the PD&E phase? Since the ACE study results can be adopted into the PD&E phase, documentation is critical. How does each corridor compare from an environmental perspective? What was the feedback from the agencies or the public? There could be ACE studies where the objective is to refine the study area or identify corridors instead of eliminate corridors. This could be for projects that are in the ETDM planning screen stage. Similar to the methodology memorandum, the ACER must include the standard public notice statement. Always check the ETDM and PD&E manuals for the latest statement, although it probably doesn't change often. This is pretty straightforward. It's a boilerplate section on ACER. Most ACE studies use this similar organization shown on the screen, starting with an introduction, purpose and need, how corridors were developed from the initial analysis, and what corridors were considered for the ACE study. And then there's the actual evaluation, what meetings were conducted with the public and agencies, and the feedback received. And then what were the results of the ACE study? During our research, we identified some best practices when developing the report. Before developing the ACER, reach out to OEM for some sample templates. There's also an ACER template on the OEM website. While developing the report, use maps, figures, tables, and charts. This is how you effectively tell the project story. Where are each of the environmental resources and where are the corridors? That's best explained with a map. Use evaluation matrices to compare corridors, similar to a PD&E study. Okay, so we're going to skip over a few of these sections, the introduction and the purpose and need sections, and highlight some of the more significant topics in the ACER. We'll start with the alternative corridor development and the alternatives considered. The starting point for these topics is from the initial analysis where you already defined the study area or identify the corridors for the ACE study. It's good to provide a recap of what was accomplished during this stage. If traffic projections were used in the initial analysis, then provide an overview of what happened in the results. Was constraints mapping used or land suitability mapping to initially identify corridors? During the ACE study, how were corridors refined from the initial analysis? Recall from lesson 1 and in lesson 3, as Sylvia just finished, that the corridor width for analysis typically narrows as a project develops in the ACE process. The initial analysis could have started with a swath, and the ACE study could have refined this down to a narrow alignment, something closer to a typical section. Discuss if there were new access points that were considered during the ACE process. Note that it is possible that initial corridors were maintained the same for the ACE study. This could be the case when you have identified corridors during the initial analysis that have a defined typical section. When the refinements are completed, you should have a set of corridors or a study area to begin the evaluation. These are the corridors that are considered for the evaluation. As mentioned earlier, it's important to maintain the naming convention of the corridors. Okay, so now it's time for documenting the evaluation. This section of the ACER should be the largest section. I know we sound like a broken record, but it's important to point out that the evaluation must be consistent with the approach detailed in the methodology memorandum. As Sylvia was discussing in lesson 3, you should have results for each of the major evaluation topics. For instance, what corridors meet purpose and need? What corridors have the least impacts to environmental resources? There could be corridors that have no potential impacts to historic resources, but high potential impacts to wetlands. This should be described in detail, perhaps with a table comparing all of the corridors. What corridors have the lowest cost? This is usually combined with other engineering topics, such as utility impacts. At the end of the analysis, you would have summarized in a narrative assessment for each corridor. In the narrative assessment, you would also consider the public and agency feedback, and then wrap it up with an evaluation summary indicating which corridors are moving forward to the next phase. Public engagement is critical to every project. This is the section to document what meetings were held, when were they held, what was presented or discussed, and what feedback was received. What was the general consensus from the community on each of the potential corridors? I won't get into any specifics, but we had a project where we had to look at a reasonable range of alternatives, but there was one corridor that we suspected would have issues with the public, since it would have bisected a neighborhood. Although, if I put my traffic engineering hat on, it was actually a great solution to capture as much traffic as possible. But long story short, the community put the kibosh on that corridor very quickly. So anyway, back to ACE training. Document what corridors receive support and the lack thereof. And are there any unresolved issues that need to be assessed in future phases? For instance, you may have a corridor that has a potential to impact a community feature, but at this stage, with a level of design information, it's difficult to say for certain. This could be something that is explored more closely during the PD&E stage. All right, so enough of public involvement. Let's move on and wrap this up. Now we're on to results and decisions. Just like any report, you have a recommendations section. So for the ACER, what were the decisions made? If you started with a study area, what corridors were identified? Or perhaps, how was a study area identified? If you started with corridors, which corridors were eliminated? What is moving forward to the next phase, which could be the PD&E phase? There's other project parameters that could have changed as a result of the ACE study. In several cases, the purpose and need could be updated. New environmental features could have been discovered. All right, so we made it back to this ACE process graphic, and we're almost at the bottom. Now that the ACER is prepared, it's time to conduct the review. This should be after the project team's standard QA/QC process. First step is to send it to the lead agency for their review. Afterwards, it's updated as necessary and submitted an environmental screening tool for the ETATs, the tribes, and the public's review. This is a 30-day review timeframe. I'd like to point out a few best practices that should help facilitate these reviews. Collaborate with OEM and provide regular project updates. And then when the ACER is ready for their review, meet with them before submitting. Walk them through the draft ACER to get some initial feedback. This also helps with their review. That is, of course, if OEM is the lead agency. Okay, so nothing's perfect, right? You'll probably receive some comments, maybe from the lead agency, maybe from ETAT. The nature of the comments could be minor or more significant. After the lead agency's review, check with them on the updated ACER and if they require another round of reviews. Consider setting up a pre-scheduled resolution meeting with the lead agency. This could be after the 21-day review period and may help expedite the comment resolution process. Afterwards, upload the ACER into the environmental screening tool for ETAT's review. Any significant comments from the ETAT may warrant a discussion with the lead agency. Depending on the outcome from this effort, the ACER may need to be updated and go through another round of reviews with ETAT, or it can go straight to the lead agency for approval. Okay, now we're at the good part, approval, and at the bottom of the ACE process graphic. Approval of the ACER is accomplished by the lead agency. For most projects, that is OEM. And for other projects, it could be the district. When corridors are eliminated, the lead agency considers the ACER for adoption. For eliminated corridors, both the lead agency and potential cooperating agency must concur with any eliminated alternatives not advancing to the PD&E study. The good news is that the cooperating agency is already one of the ETAT members. Therefore, they have already reviewed and they've been involved with the ACE process. After approval, the ETDM coordinator will publish the screening reports for the final ACER. There's a few differences between the ETDM planning and programming screen. For the ETDM programming screen, the preliminary summary report is published. A final summary report is published following the class of action determination. This is a summary of the best practices for developing the ACER. It's always a good idea to check out sample ACERs and reach out to OEM. Also, feel free to download some from the ETDM tool or the website. These could provide a good starting point for the ACER, along with the FDOT ACER template on the OEM website. The ACE story is best told with visualizations within the ACER, figures, charts, tables. This really helps to tell that story. Consider pre-scheduling meetings with the lead agency to walk them through the ACER and potential comment resolution meeting. This could help expedite the review process. There are a number of resources available online and highlighted here. As always, any questions, reach out to OEM. Okay, and this was mentioned earlier in the housekeeping slide, but we wanted to reiterate this again. This is kind of breaking news. There is a website that is set up for the ACE process training that we are conducting today and last week. It does include the recorded webinars, handouts, and resources. Okay, so now let's take a few moments to answer some questions.
Thanks, Chris. Right now, all the questions are answered. We've come to the end of the webinar, and we're going to stay on. If you've got a few more questions, either specifically to the materials that Chris just covered or overall, we've got some time to answer those questions. And if no questions come in, then we'll bid everybody a great afternoon and wish you all well. As Chris mentioned, we are, in fact, recording everything. The turnaround time should be very quick. We'll probably have them up either later this week or at latest early next week. Once they're uploaded, you'll get an email notification, just like you got from webinar 1, that'll have a link to the materials. So just like Chris said, you'll have, we'll break out the recordings per lesson, so you can just digest and come back and look at the individual piece that makes sense for you. We'll also, any of the materials and handouts, they'll also be linked on that website. And if there's other materials like how to do the ETDM process and things like that that may support your involvement in the ACE process, we'll provide those links as well. And I guess I want to give a shout out to Ruth Roaza, because behind the scenes, yes, she's the one helping us with the recordings and developing the website and cutting everything up. And we've got a great team here. I want to give special thanks to Sylvia and Ted and Chris. I think this was wonderful. And then we also have Katasha Cornwell and Tu Clark that have been instrumental as well. So I think not seeing any questions at this point. I think we've done a good job. If you have any questions, you need any help, obviously talking to your district environmental folks is a great stop. Talking to your PDC and OEM is a great stop. And then, of course, reaching out to all of OEM, myself, Katasha, Tu, and everybody else. We're happy to help you guys. Part of what we wanted to do with the recordings is we know you're not doing ACE tomorrow, but you might be doing ACE 6 months from now or a year from now, and now you've got a spot where, hey, how do you do that methodology memorandum again? Let me watch the video for the methodology memorandum and get a good sense for it. So I see thank yous coming in and no questions. So I think with that, I'm going to wish everybody a great day, and we appreciate your attendance at the webinar. Everybody take care.